So you're through the worst of the sickle cell crisis pain, but now you've woken up in the body of an 80-year-old. Why does this happen? I'm Dr. Lewis Thomas. I have sickle cell SC and I'm a former GP turned sickle cell coach. In a sickle cell crisis, sickled red blood cells block the flow of blood in small vessels which supply the joints. The joints are then starved of oxygen, and this creates the classical intense pain of sickle cell called ischemia. Eventually, once the sickle cell blockage is clear, the blood flow returns to the joint tissue. And you might think that this would always be a good thing, but what happens is the sudden rush of oxygen and nutrients to the joint causes damage. And this is for a few reasons. So the flood of oxygen creates these toxic molecules called free radicals, and they do damage. And then the white blood cells rush in and they cause load of inflammation, which creates the soreness. So basically, the blood vessels and cells around this joint are in a weakened state. They're stressed from the lack of oxygen. So they get overwhelmed and injured by this sudden flood of blood. And this is what we call a reperfusion injury. So if you imagine taking a really weakened, thin water balloon and putting it onto the tap and then just turning the tap up to maximum pressure, it will just explode the balloon. That's why you feel the pain, the soreness and the stiffness, and that injury will last for a few days. So what you can do to help is eat a healthy diet, make sure it's high in vitamin C and vitamin E because they're antioxidants and they'll help mop up some of those oxygen toxic molecules. You can take anti-inflammatory painkillers like ibuprofen or naproxen, and they'll have a greater effect on this kind of inflammatory pain. So you might not even need to take stronger opioids at this point. So I hope that gives you a better idea of when you have a second type of pain and stiffness in the joints after the worst of the sickle cell crisis have passed. So if that's been helpful, follow along for further tips about living well with sickle cell.